I will now call upon Mayor Tory to address City Council.
Madam Speaker, with your concurrence in the Council's, I'll speak from here because I have some notes that I want to make a reference to, and I'll begin by saying that I'll be moving that we recess today's Council meeting until this afternoon out of respect for the victims of last night's attack. An unspeakable act was perpetrated Sunday on Danforth Avenue in our city, and I want to begin, and I'm sure I speak for every member of Council and for all the people of the City of Toronto, in extending condolences to the families of those mourning the loss of their loved ones and to those in hospital this morning. And we're all praying for complete recovery for all of them. Our entire city has been shocked by this cowardly act of violence. As I said earlier this morning at the scene, I'm of course angry, as we all are, that someone would carry out such an attack which really amounts to an attack on our city itself. Gun violence in any part of our city is horrible and completely unacceptable. As the shots rang out last night, our police officers, our firefighters and paramedics rushed to the scene. And just as we saw earlier this year, we are all once again immensely proud and grateful for the courage and for the professionalism that they showed. And I want to express our collective gratitude to all first responders who came as quickly as possible to help people in the wake of this horrific incident. I'm continuing to get updates from Police Chief Mark Saunders about the ongoing investigation. I could see for myself at the scene, where I was joined by Councillors Fragadakis and Fletcher, that every possible effort was being made by our very capable police service so as to determine as quickly as possible what happened and why. I have total confidence in the ability of our police under the Chief's leadership to determine what did in fact happen here. I want to publicly thank as well Premier Doug Ford and Federal Minister Bill Blair, who were both immediately in touch to offer condolences as well as to offer any assistance that Toronto might require. In times of such horror, it is good to know that Toronto is not alone, and Toronto will never be alone, and most important of all, that the people of Toronto will never be alone. While our city will always be resilient in the face of such attacks, it does not mean such a terrible act committed against our residents is any less painful. This is an attack against innocent families and against our entire city. This is a tragedy, another tragedy in our city this year. I promise all of the people of Toronto, but most importantly those directly affected by this tragedy, that we will all be relentless in getting answers about why this senseless attack happened. I've said for some time that the city has a gun problem, in that guns are far too readily available to far too many people. It is something I spoke about very directly at a federal government conference held late last year on acts of violence. As I've said repeatedly, this is an international problem and this is a domestic problem. There are far too many people carrying around guns in our city and our region who should not have them. You've heard me ask the question of why anybody would need to buy 10 or 20 guns, which they can lawfully do under the present laws. And that leads to another question we need to discuss. Why does anyone in this city need to have a gun at all? And I know even answering that question won't fully eliminate tragedies like this, but even if we can prevent one of these incidents, then in my view it is a discussion worth having, and having very soon. To that end, I'll be reaching out to both of the federal and provincial governments, as they have reached out to us, to urge them to sit down with us at as early a date as possible to discuss a range of public safety issues, including guns and the legality of guns in various different contexts. I think it is fitting for us to revisit this issue, yes, to protect our city, but also out of respect for those who have lost their lives and had their lives dramatically disrupted by this senseless violence. In the meantime, I will work with you and with everybody else, all of the other governments, our police service and the community, to do whatever we can to comfort and to heal our city, and to assist the police in getting the answers we all need arising out of this senseless act. And so I put the motion on the table, Madam Speaker, to ask that we, out of respect for these individuals and these families, that we would adjourn our proceedings until, or recess our proceedings until 2 o'clock this afternoon. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I will now call upon other members who wish to say a few words at this time. Councillor Fragadakis.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. I'm sorry, I've written down some notes because I didn't think I was going to be able to make this speech. This is so heartbreaking. The victims and their loved ones are in my thoughts and prayers. I cannot imagine what they are going through. The pain, the loss. The Danforth has always been a part of my home all my life. And last night out there in the community with both Paula and the mayor, it just felt so devastating. And words don't do how we're all feeling any justice. And as we mourn, cherishing and caring for those in our lives may help with the pain. And coming together as a community in this difficult time is so important. I also want to take this opportunity to thank all of the first responders and the medical teams, because I know this is tough on them too.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, Speaker, I too want to extend my deepest condolences to the families who lost loved ones last night, and to those who were wounded and in the hospital, and to everybody that was traumatized sitting in restaurants as someone marauded along the Danforth, shooting indiscriminately into restaurants and into the parquet. It was a terrifying, terrifying night on the Danforth, one that won't be forgotten for a long time. And I know we always say that can't happen here when we see those gunmen in the States doing the same thing, and it has happened here now, and it's happened in a local community. But one that is very strong, caring, and resilient community, that is the Danforth. I know the trauma units are out there for people who need to get help, to speak about it, and deal with it, and process it as the community is now processing it. Even today, people are still calling to find out where their children are, that and know that they're safe. It's a terrifying thing, and one that no city or no neighborhood should have to go through. And I echo the mayor's statement about guns. This was not gang-related shooting, but it was a gun-related shooting. And this council many times has taken strong positions on handguns and other guns in the city of Toronto, and I think it's time to step up again. And I want to assure you that the Danforth is a strong area, the people are strong there, and Danforth will remain strong despite this terrible tragedy in our midst.
Thank you. Councillor Mamalidi.
I too want to extend my condolences to the families and also support any and all victims, that include those that may have been hurt, those that may have saw and seen the horrific shooting last night, and also the Danforth, which I absolutely love myself. I think everybody does. And to say that I think the mayor is right. I think we do have a very big problem with guns, but we also have a problem with who's holding the guns and why. And I think that part of it, many of us really do want to investigate and find the logic and the reasoning. And the other part to this equation is, where are the guns and who's holding them and where are they stored? And do we as a city have anything to say or do about that? My daughter texted me this morning and asked me whether I saw the news and whether or not I'm afraid. And my answer to her was yes, but don't worry, it's still a safe city. And we'll find out how to deal with it. Her response to me this morning, and she's 13 years old, is, no, it's not. And so when our children are starting to ask these questions, and we stand up here and talk about this and grieve the way we're doing, I think we have an obligation to make everybody feel safe and start talking about all the issues and not worry about where we stand politically. This has to be dealt with, and I personally think that this is the top of the agenda, and nothing else should, in fact, take precedent, even at this meeting, except guns and how we deal with that effectively and meaningfully going into the summer months, because I'm afraid it's going to get worse.
Thank you. If I can ask members of council to rise for a moment of silence. Thank you. This meeting is now recessed until 2 p.m.